Lord, I lift your name on high. Lord, I love to sing your praises. I'm so glad you're in my life. I'm so glad you came to save us. You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay. From the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky, Lord, I lift your name on high.
Who doesn't like Jeff Foxworthy? He's an amazing comedian, and one of his favorite routines has to do with, well, you guessed it, signs. The idea is that some people are so simple minded that they ought to wear a sign so that you know you don't really need to engage in an adult conversation with them. You're not having a serious conversation. And he gives a few examples. For instance, he pulls up to a gas station and he's got a flat tire. And an attendant comes out and says, "Tire go flat?" And he replies, oh no, I was driving down the road and these other three just self-inflated. Here's your sign. Or when he was moving one time, and as he's loading up the car, neighbor comes by and says, "Hey, you moving?" And he says, "Oh no, just once or twice a week, we like to load up everything in the house, box it up, see how many we can get in the car. It's fun." Here's your sign. Or when he'd had a good day fishing on the lake and he pulled up to the dock and somebody asked him, "You catch those fish?" And he replied, "No, they just surrendered." Well, when we think about these stories, it is kind of humorous sometimes how that people ask obvious questions, questions that really don't even need answers. And so it was with Jesus when people would come up and they would be asking for a sign over and over again. They're asking for a sign. But let me remind you what it says in the book of 1 Corinthians. In the first chapter, beginning in verse 20, it reads like this: "Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, it pleased God through the folly of what we preach to save those who believe. For Jews demand a sign, and Greeks seek wisdom. But we preach Christ crucified, a stumbling block to the Jews and folly to the Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God and the wisdom of God. For the foolishness of God is wiser than men, and the weakness of God is stronger than men." You see, the greatest of all signs is Jesus Christ himself, the power of God, the wisdom of God. But it didn't matter what Jesus did or what Jesus taught. People were asking the same old simple-minded question: show us a sign. It was that way back in Egypt when Pharaoh, it didn't matter how many miracles Moses performed, he just wasn't going to believe. And so it was with many in the time of Jesus. The number of miracles that he performed, well, the world couldn't even hold the books that would be written if every one of them was recorded in all of its detail. But here they are asking again and again and again for a sign, and never, never coming to faith. Well, I want us to take a look at a sign that took place long ago, a sign of all signs that really helps us in our lives understand who Jesus is. It comes from the book of Isaiah in the 7th chapter, and it involves a man named Ahaz. Now, Ahaz, the king of Judah, is pretty concerned because he's got two neighbors to the north. There's Rezin in Syria and Pekah, the son of Remaliah, the king of Israel. And they're conspiring against him because he won't join their coalition. They want to form a coalition against the king of Assyria, Tiglath-Pileser, who's oppressing his neighbors. And if we'll stand strong together, we'll be able to drive him off. But Ahaz is concerned about this. Well, God sends Isaiah and his son Shear-Jashub. He sends them to Ahaz to provide him some backbone, to provide some sign that will strengthen his resolve to withstand his northern neighbors and their pressures, and not depend on human coalitions to stand against Assyria. What they needed to do was be faithful to God. So, in this 7th chapter, we read about that predicament, and then we read about God's promise. Isaiah told Ahaz to ask for any sign that he wanted. It didn't matter how great it was, and God would supply the sign. Ahaz wouldn't ask, but God provided one anyway. And it's one that has blessed the world for all time. There's also a prediction about the downfall of those who were oppressing him. But we'll take a look at these together. The main thing is the peculiarity of this sign is that a child was going to be born, and his name would be Emmanuel, God with us. The sign of all signs, God with us. Jesus Christ incarnate in the flesh. So I'm glad that we can take a moment to stop and pause, lift up each other in this Sunday night ministry of the Old Hickory Church of Christ and talk about Jesus Christ, the greatest of all signs. And I pray that we'll also be thinking about not only the signs that God has provided us of his love, but also the signs of our faith and our hope and our love, that we ought to engage in a consistent message and let people see our light, our sign, so that they can believe Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, God with us. Thank you for being here tonight. Enjoy your discussions and your fellowship, and have a wonderful week. God bless.
You came from heaven to earth to show the way, from the earth to the cross, my debt to pay, from the cross to the grave, from the grave to the sky. Lord, I lift your name on high.